Good morning, and it is, we're in chapter 10 of Mosiah, and we are going to talk a little more about the people of Zenith, and Zenith speaking here. And it came to pass that we began to establish a kingdom, and we began to possess the land in peace. So here they have it, and they make weapons of war to protect themselves against the Lamanites. Obviously, they knew that the Lamanites would come up against them, and he set guards round about. Now, it's important that we see that he set guards round about. He guarded the flocks and everything against these enemies. And it came to pass that we began to inherit the land of our fathers for many years, for the space of 22 years. And I will get back to that later. And they tilled the ground, they made cloth, and we did have continual peace in the land for the space of 22 years. And I think I'll throw it in here. They do get a war here. It came to pass that King Laman died, and his son began to reign in his stead. So here we have a situation where we have a change, and people start to get stirred up into war. And I was trying to work this out, because he says we did have continual peace in the land for a space of 22 years, meaning they had 12 years, and then they had a really bad battle, and then they had peace after that. So this must be about 34 years, is what I work out, because obviously at the end of last chapter that was not peace, and you couldn't say they had continual peace then. So obviously this is after that event. And I thought later on, I'll just go down here really. There's a lot in here, but if I do it, then it's going to be about 20 minutes long, I know, because I've already recorded this once and realized he says here, and this very cause has King Laman by his cunning and lying and craftiness and his fair promises deceived me, that I have brought my people up into the land, that they may destroy them, and we have suffered these many years in this land. So he's saying we have continual peace, but we've suffered these many years in this land. So I was trying to think, how can you say that it's continual peace and that you're suffering all this time? And I kind of worked it out to be, I could only think of the Ukraine and Russia at the time. So if you think of Ukraine, if you go back about 34 years, strange enough, about 34 years, I guess, around there, the Ukraine and several other of Russian states, they were all part of the USSR, and they all decided that they wanted their own independence and split from Russia. And so at the time, I believe it was Gorbachev. Sorry, I don't want to start naming names too much, because I've not got anything in front of me to fact check. But anyway, he let him do it. Said, okay, well, you want your freedom? I will give you your freedom. And there was a freedom, and there was a lot of interaction between these countries, but they had their freedom to have their own government. And you might say, from a 50,000 foot view of the situation, they had continual peace. We didn't hear that much about, there wasn't tanks being rolled in over the weeks and things like that into Ukraine. But now, for the last couple of years, they've had a really sore conflict. There's been people displaced, and there's been, a war going on. And this wouldn't be peace, but 30 years before, you could say there was peace. Now, if you look at it closely, I know many times when there was like bombings in Russia and there was conflict, there was small conflicts in Ukraine, localized usually, and we just see that it wasn't just peaceful. There was still a lot of hurt feelings and things in between both of them, and even as they were trading and being peaceful, there was still things politically bubbling beneath the surface. So I think that ties in with what's happening here. Is you have to say that it's been pretty peaceful. We haven't had a war. We haven't had armies coming in to destroy us, but we've had our troubles. We've had them crossing our paths and us crossing theirs, and it's not been that pleasant. But we've had peace. So many years they have suffered in the land. There's probably a good source for people to thieve if they wanted to, and a good way of seeing that is up again. Sorry, I keep going back and forth, and I hope I don't talk too much about this. But we're it just talks about and they were a wild and ferocious and bloodthirsty people, believing in the tradition of the fathers. Kind of just saying, they're not nice people to be around. And if they're going to go and attack somebody, who are they going to attack? They're going to attack the people they don't like, and they describe how they don't like them. And I really, I could talk a while, and I did in my last attempt at this, in the fact that they talk about all the wrongs that happened, and he gives a history according to the Lamanites. And I think this is really interesting. They were wronged in the wilderness, they were wronged on the sea, they were wronged when they got in the land of the first inheritance, and all this because Nephi was more faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord. Therefore he was favored of the Lord, for the Lord heard his prayers and answered them, and he took the lead in the wilderness. And they were wroth with him because they understood not the dealings of the Lord, and they were also wroth with him upon the waters because they hardened their hearts against the Lord. So here we have a situation, and they're wroth when he arrived, and wroth because they'd taken the ruling of the people, and then they're wroth when he left. So no matter what, he was wrong, and he took the breastplates, and they said they robbed him. I think there's going to be people that we know in the world that is always going to find something negative about what we do, and they're going to see it as negative. I know that when they announced the Birmingham Temple, there were people who were negative about having the church building a temple, like it's something that's a horrible thing. I was shocked, gobsmacked, when I heard that from some people that used to be quite close friends, but they decided to go a different path and leave the church because we might build a temple in Birmingham. Anyway, well, not because of that. They were out before that, but you can see that there's always going to be negative people. The last thing I just kind of wanted to do, and I'm going up and down because I can't just read it all to you. We did go up in the strength of the Lord. I like the way that he did this. He caused his women and children to be hidden in the wilderness. He causes all of his old men and his young men to bear arms, and he ranked them according to their age, which is contrast, we'll see later, with his son Noah, who ends up not having the foreknowledge because he didn't send out spies or anything, apparently. Boasted in his own strength, and when it came down to the crunch and the Lamanites were upon him, he said, "Oh, just leave your children and women. We've got to flee now. We've got to get out of here." To the men, who does that? But anyway, we'll talk about that later. But in contrast here, he's saying, even in his old age, he stood up and fought with his people, and they went up with it in the strength of the Lord. I think we need to remember to always rely on the Lord, even in the harder times, especially in the harder times. Those things won't go away. The Lamanites didn't just go away. They still had to fight them, but they got to fight them in the strength of the Lord. And I think whatever we face, we can fight in the strength of the Lord. And I'm going to leave that today on there. So I hope you have a good day and that you rely on the strength